Welcome to the Wellness Creator Podcast. In this episode, we are talking about writing online and blogging on the internet as a business tool. I'm Jenny Barcelos, CEO and co-founder of Marvelous, and I'm joined with my co-founder and CMO, Sandy Connery. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Jenny. So writing, what do we got to say about writing on the internet?
So this is something, just to give some context, we started blogging in our business 10 years ago, so maybe even a little longer than 10 years ago, as a way to get traffic to NamaStream, which is what Marvelous used to be called. We still have blog posts from that era that bring us visitors to our website to this day, which is incredible. And it just speaks to the power of writing online. And that blogging is not the only way to write online. Many of you are microblogging on platforms like Instagram. Anywhere where you write a caption, you're essentially microblogging and your words matter. And we just want to talk today about kind of the power of writing on the internet, the opportunities that it can bring to you and your business, and some predictions of kind of where writing online is headed moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's certainly changed. Like the whole concept of like that phrase, like writing online didn't exist when we started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't a thing to think about. You either, you were a blogger, which obviously is writing online, but it wasn't like something that you considered. If you were a writer, you blogged, right? But there's a whole bigger strategy for all of us now with writing online. So, okay, so your first point, Jenny, was writing is how you build a community.
Yeah. So I like to think about this in terms of how I think about social media in general. Like it's kind of hard to separate now, like blogs and newsletters and social, like just kind of like everything is a big conglomeration of whatever your written word is on the internet. And I think that in order to be effective in 2024 as an internet creator, that you need to do it in a way that's fostering and engaging with other people. And it's fostering community and engaging with your audience. And so writing is a really powerful way to do that, but you have to write in a certain way, right? Like you have to write in a way where you're asking questions, asking for feedback. You build that engagement into your blog post, into your newsletter for a reason, because nobody really wants to be talked at. Like in 2024, that doesn't work. That's something that has shifted for sure.
Right. I think the people who start often miss that entire point. And it is more of like, let me show you all the things I know. Let me like convince you that I'm the person, the expert that you want to work with. Right. And it's very much at you where today it's got to be much more with an eye for engagement, asking questions at the end or encouraging, stories to be shared and so on.
Yeah, and I think this is just getting more and more so. I think because of the way that social platforms have proliferated, that's impacted blogging and other forms of writing as well. Even if you think about novels now, like I don't know the last time that I read a novel, and maybe this speaks to the kind of novels that I read, where there wasn't like a reading group guide in the back of it or associated with that book. Like everything is now kind of a communal activity. So it's not just like, oh, here's this perfect work of literature. I'm sure those exist. I haven't been reading those books. And like, there you go. It's like, no, here's the story and here are like some themes that you can discuss and here's some questions you can ask your friends. And I mean, it's just meant to be interactive is another way of thinking about it because people want interactive experiences.
Right. And we're going to talk about our conversation with Sarah Fay in a few minutes, but that's a great example of how she released a novel chapter by chapter, reading it out loud and encouraging comments and so on Substack, but we'll get there. Okay, writing is how to figure out what you believe.
Yes. This is something that David Perell talks a lot about, and I know you and I are huge fans of him, including of his podcast, and he runs a massive program focused on writing online. And I would just say he explains this really well, but it's essentially like it's okay to not know all the answers before you sit down with a keyboard or pen and paper. That part of the way that you figure out what you believe or what you know and how you understand the world is by writing. Right. And I think that we all know that in terms of journaling. I mean, this is why morning pages are so popular and so effective. And I think why journaling itself is a practice that's really transformational for a lot of people. But it can be that in your public writing as well, and in your community driven writing, because the truth is, like, we don't have all the answers. None of us do. Like, we may have some degree of expertise. If you're listening to this, chances are that you have some expertise in your wellness modality or modalities, but you certainly don't know everything, right? And there's this element of humility that we bring into our writing that's conversational, that's asking what other people think or what they know or how they can lend their expertise or their ideas. And it's really, really true. Like, I have figured out, even just in terms of my own political beliefs, writing about the granularity of a particular political issue has helped me to understand my beliefs better in a way that just like passively reading other people's ideas, I would never get there without kind of like hashing it out myself.
And I think if you don't understand this part about writing online, you can get stuck in perfectionism. Like, this blog post or this newsletter, whatever it is, has to be right and has to be accurate. And I have to like know all the angles, and I have to be able to handle any comment that may come my way because I'm the so-called expert, right? But if you approach it as much more of an exploration, you know, first of all, it's way more fun to do that kind of writing, and it just takes all the pressure off. So it is, you are a process. You are in development, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think to take the pressure off, you don't have to have it all figured out. Yeah. It's like you're learning about yourself and your stance.
Yeah. And you can tease out what you've learned and express that in your writing while still not professing to know everything. And I think that your point's really poignant, Sandy, because we have coaching clients where I know they approach their blogs, for example, or even their Instagram posts with this sense of fear or anxiety because they feel like they haven't gathered enough information. They don't know enough. They haven't read enough.
They don't have the right degree yet.
They don't have the right degree. Yeah. And I think that part of the beauty of blogging, and I mean, when I say blogging, that means writing online. Like, I use it very loosely. Like, part of the beauty of that is that it's this like exploratory process. So, goodness, we all need to explore our beliefs a little bit and not just kind of passively take what is dished out to us on the internet. That's a whole other conversation. But like, this is a very important tool for you as like a citizen, as a thinker, as like a member of a community, to be able to understand what you believe and why. And writing is really, really kind of unsurpassed in its ability to help you do that.
Right. And then writing is how you express and share your thought leadership.
Yeah. So this just goes to
extension of it.
This goes to exactly what we teach and have taught for years now in our Visible course, where we kind of teach you how to become a thought leader on the internet, how to embrace that identity, and like the specifics and mechanics of like how to produce content that elevates your thought leadership. And I mean, this is like, you start to develop a byline, you start to get known for writing and talking about certain topics. And that is very powerful when someone is considering purchasing a program, product, or service from you, to be able to Google your name or click articles that you've written or things that you've written on the internet and be able to see, oh, wow, this person really does know what they're talking about. They have some work in this area.
Right. And this is how you distinguish yourself from everyone else in the same niche. This is how you attract new clients. This is how you attract the right clients that you actually want to work with by expressing your thoughts about the work that you do, right? Yeah. This is, I think, such an important point for entrepreneurs, is you've got to write something that is different than what everyone else is saying. Like, you have to distinguish yourself. You can't talk about weight loss the same way that every single Instagram post is talking about weight loss, for example, or strength or whatever. Like, you have to be different, I think. Say something that only you can say. Write the post that only you can write.
Yeah. And the collection of writings.
Yeah, it's not just one.
Out, right? Yeah. Like, because It's like maybe in a vacuum, one thing that you write can be similar to what other people write, but it's like your curated collection of what you believe and what you care enough about to put time and energy into, I think is really important. And I also want to say, Sandy, that this piece of it, this thought leadership piece of writing online, is what separates you as a creator from other people who are maybe just influencers or entertainers
Right.
online. So there's a lot of people, we can all think of YouTubers or big Instagram personalities, for example, who they build their notoriety by, like posting pictures of themselves and their family or doing ridiculous stunts on YouTube. And that's not thought leadership, right?
Right.
Like that's just
Performance.
Yeah. It's just being an entertainer and an influencer, and maybe they inspire people by showing what their life is like. But you as a creator who's building something where you're teaching someone something, you're selling them something that transforms their life, like that's not really your job is not to be an influencer in that way.
Right.
So this is how you do it. This is how you set yourself apart.
And then doing this writing publicly opens you up to new opportunities.
Yeah. So I will just say, like, you and I have certainly seen that, right? And especially, I mean, I think in this way it extends to any kind of content creation. So for us as podcasters, we've been podcasting since 2016. We've had so many doors and opportunities open to us, and people have reached out because of content that we've produced. So when you start writing and creating content, whether it's, writing a script for a podcast and then recording that show, or writing a blog post or a prolific newsletter or a script for a YouTube video, it doesn't matter. You start to open doors for yourself that you didn't even know existed. So there's one thing about like having an agenda and having goals, but when you start writing online and producing content that's good, you open up doors that you never could have planned for or imagined.
Yeah. So I think what you're talking about is someone may, number one, discover you. Someone may share your work. Someone may invite you to speak in front of their audience, whether on a podcast or write for them or whatever. But also, it's an opportunity for you to like go public. You could take your writing and go submit it to a magazine, for example, right? Like it's not just like you can take it and share it. Because you wouldn't have that opportunity if you didn't have the thing written, if you didn't have the post or the thought work done. Like you can go take it in different ways, right? And I think that is kind of cool that you can go like get published with it, right? For any number of the bazillion online magazines that are out there.
Yeah, or get a book deal, or get a Netflix deal, or get a screenplay written about something. Like just within our friends and community and colleagues and client community, like there's just so many things that I've seen, really wild things happen, like get invited to certain islands to give a talk, or get flown on a plane to go meet with so-and-so or give a presentation in front of a Fortune 100 company. Like you just don't know. If you're producing really good work, you don't know where that could possibly even lead. You just know your job is to produce really good work, and writing makes you much more likely to have those opportunities.
The other angle you could do here is like you could take somebody that is well known in your niche, who is a really established thought leader in your niche, and you can kind of battle like so and so says this, but I think this, right? And you can share that with that person, and they may share it because everyone likes a bit of controversy and a little bit of hey, they mentioned me or they wrote about my work. Like you can sort of borrow other people's audience with your writing by saying something maybe contrary or maybe agreeing with somebody too. Like you can just take their ideas and use that for your writing, and that gives you a new opportunity because there's a very high chance that they will share it if you tag them once you post it wherever you post it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that is almost like a sub point, which is that writing online effectively is essentially networking. Like it's like a form of modern networking, which we all know in business is really, really important. So it's how you get in rooms that you weren't previously in, and how you get invitations and all the things. And so I think just if you're thinking about writing online strategically, these are the things that should be in the back of your mind, like, which I think will drive you to create quality work, right?
Yeah. And I think I see a lot of blog posts that are just like facts and SEO driven. And
Yeah.
it, of course, it's smart to be SEO driven, but like I really want to encourage the listeners who are writing to bring out personality, to bring out their personal views, as you said, in the thought leadership, but to be like interesting. Like just be interesting, because there's so much of the same on the internet and it gets really boring very, very quickly. So I just, if you're excited about something you've seen, something you've learned, a new way of thinking about it, write about it. Like get it out there in the public sphere.
Yeah, and I think an important caveat there is like we should talk about AI. We should just mention it one time in this
Yeah.
conversation. Like maybe 8 years ago or 7 or 5, it was like you could get some mileage out of writing those fact-based, like strictly SEO driven pieces of content. But every minute the internet is getting more crowded, like every minute of every day that goes on. And the robots are going to be very shortly here better at writing that kind of content than we are as humans, right? And so it's just like when you sit down to write something, you have to write something that a robot couldn't write better than you.
Right.
So that's one way of just like, okay, am I writing? That's a question to ask yourself. Am I writing something that a robot could write? Yes or no? And like if it's something a robot could write, you probably shouldn't write it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go deeper, go more interesting, bring out your personality, bring out the story. Okay. And last week we interviewed Sarah Fay. So I just wanted to kind of debrief that conversation with you. She came, if you didn't listen to it, Sarah Fay is a Substack strategist, and she shared all of her thoughts and ideas for Substack, and that really that's the place, if you're looking for growth as a business owner, that is the place to be. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so what I took away, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Sandy, but what I took away from that conversation with Sarah Fay was just this, like, I think confirmation for me that Substack really is the real deal. It's kind of the future of blogging. And you sent me a link yesterday to someone who had left, who has a pretty big following, who had left recently, and then like after a few months came back to Substack. They are building something different. Like this is not just a copy of like existing tools or strategies. Like this is a new kind of way of interacting on the internet. It reminds me of like when we switched from MySpace to Facebook back in the dinosaur days of the early internet. Like it was something very different. And I've been like watching Substack from afar for the last few years, and just like more and more people that I deeply respect have made the transition from, say, a WordPress blog or a Squarespace blog or something over to Substack, because they've created a system there where people can be discovered in a way that is very challenging from like your standalone domain and your standalone website.
Yeah, I challenge anybody to go listen to that episode and not walk away going, "Oh my God, I've got to be on Substack." Like her enthusiasm and her belief in the platform is super infectious. I do agree that this is like, if you want to get in early on something, this is the place, right? Like there's 20 trillion YouTubes and podcasts. There's not 20 trillion Substacks. And she shares those numbers in that episode. And it's quite remarkable how low it is. And you can just see the opportunity. Yeah. So, yeah, quite frankly, after we finished or stopped recording, you and I had a really serious chat about what we could do, how we could use Substack and the growth and the potential of it. And we'll share more of that as it comes up. But it was like, and it is beautiful. Like we both write on Substack, and it's like, everything about it feels different. I mean, you have to be a writer to do that, although they are introducing audio and they are introducing video, and they also have podcasting on it. So they're smart. Like those founders are really thinking about turning the whole social media internet thing on its head. It's remarkable to watch.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, just bringing it back to writing, Sarah is a major published memoirist, and she talks about the importance of writing this way as like a published author. And that's really who their initial audience was, is they were focused on writers. And bloggers, and I think they've just done such a good job of making, like, they have these other tools like audio and video tools that are, and community tools that are I don't know, I think on the periphery, but as a blogging
Yes.
newsletter tool, they are like unmatched, I would say, at this point. And this is, I believe, the future, at least for the next few years. Like, this is the future of the internet, and there's like the copycats out there like Beehive. That's just what happens when you like strike gold. We certainly had that happen to us, where we figured something out and then the copycats kind of come out of the woodwork. That's just how business works. But I just think the style of writing and interacting online is is the future, at least in the near term.
Yeah.
So I think if you're listening to this and you have a blog, you should seriously consider whether it makes sense for you to publish your work, your writing, on a platform like Substack, just because of the unfair advantage that you have as a creator on there. I think, again, she shared the statistics, but there are far, far, far fewer writers than there are consumers of content, which is like, as a creator, that's like, those are the places you want to go.
It's the dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she also was talking about her publishing, and her publisher wanted her to be on, like, she had to be on Substack.
Yeah.
So if any of you are thinking about writing a book, like, you have to go and establish an audience on there. I thought that was interesting. And then I referenced earlier, I just wanted to finish the point about her book and her like writing a chapter and releasing it on Substack, and writing a chapter and releasing it on Substack. And it's this completely experiential book writing. Like, it's so fascinating. Like, how cool that you can like connect with the author, talk with the author, look forward to the piece being released, jump into the comments with people who are also fans, like, it's just so cool. So there's really, it's not just, there's other ways you can use the writing tool, like this idea of dripping chapters or dripping content, or sort of tell a story and getting people like ready. It's like old days of TV when you had to wait for the episode to be released on Thursday nights, right? Like, it's like that. I think it's so fun.
Yeah, and she talks about even like Charles Dickens novels, right? Like, that's how those novels were released.
Right. Yes.
And it's also how a lot of top podcasts work, right? Especially if you think about like the serialized, like the true crime podcasts, and they are the biggest podcasts on the internet by far, right? The true crime stuff. So like, that's obviously a way that people like to consume content. And it kind of preys on all of our human, like the things in our brain that love like suspense and cliffhangers and all of those things.
Yeah.
So you just want to like lean into those opportunities where you as a creator have an unfair advantage. So just in general, writing online is one of those ways that you can have an unfair advantage. And then specifically using a platform like Substack at this stage of the game, I don't know in 5 years if that's still going to be true, but at this stage of the game, like building a blog and a newsletter on Substack makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. I got to go, Coach. So thank you, Jenny. And thank you to all the listeners. Go listen to that Sarah Fay episode if you haven't already.
All right. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.